Hello, friends. Thank you for joining me for another bonus episode in this series in which I'm sharing our family's experiences in the last year of our daughter Hannah's life, which spanned from February 2008 through February 2009. My desire is to process through the events of those 12 months with a perspective that 16 years has brought, and to point listeners to hope in Jesus along the way. I'm grateful you've joined me. This is bonus episode number 170, Weary, February 4th, 2009. After a very long night, Hannah and I were released from the hospital, came home, and went straight to bed. I'm not sure why they decided to try all the lung therapies with Hannah during the overnight hours, but they did. Just as we were getting ready to go to sleep for the night, the respiratory folks came in with a high-frequency chest wall oscillation vest for us to try. This is a device used by children and adults who have cystic fibrosis, and it works by vibrating the chest at a high frequency in an effort to loosen and thin mucus. Hannah was so weak that just sitting up required great effort. We got her seated upright on the bed, the vest was strapped on, and the vibrations began. The therapist made sure everything was working okay and stepped out of the room, explaining that she would be back in 5 minutes to allow Hannah to cough. She did okay with that first round, although it did not result in a productive cough. The second round would be longer, in hopes of producing a better cough, and once again the therapist left the room. Within just a couple of minutes, Hannah really began to struggle. The pounding on her chest was more than her weakened body could bear. I positioned myself behind her and wrapped my arms around her to help her stay upright and try to absorb some of the blows with my own body. We made it for several more minutes like that, but she just couldn't do it. She became very nauseous and began pleading to stop. I punched the call button, and that was the end of the cystic fibrosis fest. We were both incredibly relieved when it was removed. Since the vest was a fail, the next step was a CPAP machine. They were concerned about keeping her oxygen levels up while she was sleeping, so I suppose the CPAP was a logical choice. But she really struggled with that too. She was very uncomfortable wearing it, and it actually seemed to frighten her a bit. She really tried to wear it, wrestling with it throughout the night. She was so miserable, I finally just took it off of her. I had been watching her oxygen sats with it on, and I watched them with it off, and there was no difference, well within the normal range either way. This is a girl who had never complained in spite of everything that had been thrown at her over the past year. If she didn't want to wear a vest or a mask, I wasn't going to make her. After that sleepless night, we spent the morning in the pulmonary lab having multiple tests done. Oh, it was hard to watch as she dutifully attempted everything they asked her to do. She was so weak and fatigued, yet she was polite and cooperative with both the nurses and the therapists. She tried to answer their questions the best she could, but words were failing her. They finally let us go, sending us home with an incentive spirometer to exercise her lungs. During this hospital experience, it hit me full force how weary Hannah was becoming. She had been so strong for so long, and her body and mind were finally wearing down. It was clear that she was in the process of dying, and as much as I didn't want to let her go, I also didn't want to push her beyond her limits. I really just wanted to take her home and let her live the time she had left without chemotherapy treatments, platelet infusions, spirometers, and isolation masks. It was time for her to rest. Here's my email from 16 years ago today. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. At least that's how Hannah and I are feeling this afternoon. We were home by 12:45 and we both headed straight to bed. She is still snoozing, but I'm up and feeling a little more like myself after a 2-hour nap. The lung therapies they tried on Hannah kept us awake most of the night, and neither one was particularly helpful. She really could not tolerate the vest, which squeezed or actually shook her lungs, and she didn't like the CPAP machine at all. The vest was supposed to help her produce some productive coughing, and it really didn't, but her congestion does seem to have gotten somewhat better on its own. The CPAP machine was supposed to keep her oxygen levels up overnight, but really wasn't necessary because the monitor they put on her indicated that her oxygen levels were consistently strong all night, whether she was wearing the mask or not. So all in all, good news. It just made for a long night. At 9 o'clock this morning, they came in and told us that we were heading down to the pulmonary lab for some more tests. So we headed down there, and they did some breathing tests to determine Hannah's lung capacity. It really wore her out, but she was a good sport and tried to do everything asked of her. We didn't get any results before we left, but I suppose we'll hear more when we return to the clinic. Her blood work was much better today. Good red counts and platelets at 66,000, so there was no need to wait for any blood products, and we got to go home pretty early. We'll return to the clinic on Friday for our next blood work and platelets if needed. Bethany seems to be feeling better, so that's good. Thank you so much for your prayers for her as well as for the rest of us. God continues to remain faithful, walking with us every step of this journey, just as you are. We are eternally grateful. He is good all the time. Jill.